broadcast. We're going to begin with Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Do we have any public comments tonight? Hearing none. Has any members, have you received communications that you would like to share? Moving on to item 5, is there a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented? Adam? Second. Thank you, Julie. Discussion? All in favor? Aye. I'm an aye as well. Motion to approve the consent agenda as presented passes. I was going to have Mr. Minahan speak, but since he's not here just yet, not sure if he's coming or not, we'll move on to our candidates, our candidate interviews, because we do have people here for our vacancy, which is pretty exciting. I'd like to welcome Mrs. Kyle Burns and Mr. Robert Holmes to our school committee meeting tonight. Both have generously volunteered to fill the empty Berlin seat left by the resignation of Susan Henry in February. I would like to extend a sincere thank you to both of you for your interest in representing your town and the schools for the next 6 months. As you may have heard, for the Berlin-Boylston Regionalization Agreement, we are all up for re-election in November. I'm going to follow the same system that Mr. Spencer employed in August when we were going through the appointments. So part 1 is that we've reviewed all of your letters of interest and resumes, and we've independently researched you on our own time. This may include past communications as well as publicly available information. I will invite you to come forward, introduce yourself, and share with us a little bit about yourself. We'd like to keep it to 3 minutes if possible. And each member will have the chance to ask you a question they have prepared. They will ask the same question to each candidate. And there may be follow-up questions from the committee to those questions. And then once the interviews are completed, we will openly deliberate on the floor. This means that all discussion is going to be public. It's going to be as awkward for you as it is for us. Once we have completed deliberations, I will ask for a committee member to appoint a candidate to fill the open seat. This requires a second from another member. If there is no second, it doesn't move on to discussion and the motion doesn't pass. When there is a second, it moves into a discussion and then a vote. In order to be appointed, we need at least, well, I was going to say 3 of 5, but 3 of 4. Correct? That would be, 3 of 4 members to vote in favor of the candidate. If 3 dissent, the motion doesn't pass. Should the motion fail and there is still a candidate left, we start the whole process all over again using the same parameters for success. And it's hard to take this advice, but please don't be nervous. Every member here has been appointed. Some of us had other people that we had to stand up and, speak for ourselves and hope that we were the best candidate. But regardless of whether we had competition or not, we know what it's like to be in your place. And we just want you to know we're not trying to stump you. We just want to try to get to know you better. So, any questions before we start? I would like to invite Mrs. Kyle Burns. Come forward. The seat. Right there. Thank you. Sure. Do you want to tell us a little bit about yourself and why you'd like to be on the school committee?
Absolutely. Good evening, members of the committee, school community. It's a pleasure to meet you. My name is Kyle Burns, and I am a resident of Berlin, Massachusetts. I'm a first grader at Berlin Memorial. My younger son will start kindergarten in the school year of 2023. We're just beginning our family's academic journey, and I'm eager to engage and support the school and the district communities in as many ways as I can. We're also new to Massachusetts, and as I told my husband when we moved in last summer, joining, participating, volunteering will be our way to meet and become part of this community. And so we've been to all the town activities. We've given to the fundraisers and teacher appreciation activities. I am a Lasagna Love volunteer, making and giving lasagna to local families in need. And now I find myself with this unique opportunity to bring my background into service for the Berlin and Boylston Regional School District. To that extent, I have a master's degree in organization development and knowledge management, a certificate in leadership coaching, and I'm an entrepreneur. And I have a career's worth of examples that indicate I have the knowledge and ability to assess, develop, and execute quality learning programs. I've had clients across all sectors, from academic institutions to large corporate entities, and I believe that my experience thus far gives me a really strong position to delve into the research and the understanding around issues that the school committee will face. I know that I can bring a level of curiosity and questioning to school committee business that offers new perspective and new potential ideas for addressing that business. My husband Brian and I and our 2 sons have felt very welcomed into this community. I'm eager to take your questions and offer what support I can to continue and build on the good work of this school committee. Thank you.
You want to start maybe with Julie, and then, Julie, you ready?
No, I'm ready, I just have to flip because I write everything down.
It's hard because you come with a couple questions in case somebody else
Right,
has that question, so you gotta choose.
can't see even, okay. All right, here we go, I'm ready. Okay, Kyle, nice to meet you. So first off, thank you for stepping forward. This serving volunteer is a big task, so thank you for that. All right, I see that you have 1 child in elementary school and 1 hearing at Berlin Memorial School, which is a terrific school, as you know.
Yes.
It really is. So my question to you is, how would you seek to understand issues that affect Boylston Elementary School and the middle high school with your children being as you know here?
Sure. So we, as I said, we wanted to participate as much as possible. So we are currently deep in baseball land, which is West Boylston, Boylston, and Berlin. We also did soccer in the fall, so we met lots of parents and families from both regional areas. I also, this is a funny connection, when I was 18 years old, I traveled with an international community service organization called Up the People. And one of my very best friends, we lived for a year, traveled the world doing service and learning about the people of the world. She lives in Boylston. Her 2 kids are now here at Tonto. So of all the world's places to end up, I'm 7 miles from a person who I love dearly, and have that great insight into the Boylston world through her. And she's been such a helpful friend just in letting us get connected. So I think right now I've started the process, right? We're new and we're just getting involved, finding ways to cross the boundaries and the barriers if there are any. I don't know. I haven't experienced them because we keep crossing them naturally. So I think that's just the best way for me to move forward anyway to build community and certainly to understand what's happening both in Boston and in Berlin and be able to address those needs here in the community.
Thank you.
Sure.
Thanks. I also have a first grader in Berlin too, so maybe, I don't know.
Most likely.
Yeah. Well, my question is about the budget. The last 2 months, we've been discussing the budget here, we've been seeing the presentations, and the towns just voted on them. So in your opinion, what's the most important part of the budget we should be looking at next year, in the next committee?
Well, I haven't seen the budget in particular, and the last town meeting was during the baseball game, so I missed the town meeting itself. But that said, I've worked with budgets through in a previous life, I worked for the National Student Organization, I worked for nonprofits, and budgets are a huge part of what the organization does. And in my experience, I know that putting the mission first is always what needs to happen. So in terms of what this school committee has to look at, I would imagine looking at curriculum quality, looking at hands-on learning opportunities for all K through 12 is going to be incredibly important. Obviously, there's a balance these days in cleaning and sanitizing and making sure that we have good air and all of the schools themselves are ready to support a clean and safe learning environment in all ways possible. So without knowing the budget, that is where I would look. Mission first, quality curriculum, and beyond that, how the school itself is operating.
Once again, thanks for joining us. I represent from Boylston and have a son at Boylston Elementary School, which is also an excellent school.
Great.
So my question is, the mitigation of COVID-19 has been the topic of much discussion in our meetings for the past 2 years. The most notable actions taken in that time were to close the schools and to require that people wear masks in school buildings. We've now seen student performance data that indicates that there was harm done due to our response to COVID. What would your decision-making process be on topics related to COVID mitigation in the future?
Sure. So I think the data shows nationally all student performance is down because of COVID in general, because of closing their schools, because of not having strong learning opportunities or the right learning opportunities. Face-to-face is obviously the best for all schools. So that said, it's happening everywhere, not just here. And so the efforts that this district has taken are pretty incredible. And frankly, when my son entered at the beginning of the year and we did the assessments, he qualified for reading support and math support in likelihood because we chose to homeschool and all of that stuff last year because of it, right? And he's soaring, he's skyrocketing now, it's amazing. So what was and what will and what's happening are different things. At the same time, science needs to drive future choices. So as COVID numbers are going up, I do think we need to keep an eye on what's happening in our communities, what our hospital loads are, what the CDC recommendations are. I come from a background in science. My father's a PhD geneticist. My husband works in pharmaceuticals. He does drug development, understands what a vaccine does and how it's developed, and is on top of all of the literature. I myself volunteered early in the pandemic with the FDA to become a vaccine community speaker. It was a Zoom class on how vaccines are a primer, what a vaccine does, what the mRNA was, and how to then use good solid data and knowledge to go forward and advocate for people to make smart public health decisions. And I think going forward in the schools, that's what it is. Frankly, if we can keep in school but put masks back if they are needed, that's what I would 100% go for, because that is one of the real obvious choices for protecting our students and allowing them to have their face-to-face interaction with peers and teachers. Not the best, obviously we want this thing to go away, but it's not going to go away unless we continue to take the right steps to protect our community. And there are members of our community who are completely unprotected at this point. I have a little guy who can't be vaccinated yet, so I'm very conscientious and aware of how to protect him. And the risk that my first grader brings home from school every day because of his interactions there. But it's also the balance of what's good for him in school. So you do what's necessary. I will always land on the side of science.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to ask a two-part question, but they're connected. First is, what made you decide to seek the open position? And then what qualities and experience you have that you think lends itself to being on committee?
Sure. So my first reason is my sons, obviously, like most of you. They're very young, we're just getting started, and I know this year at Berlin Memorial has been phenomenal. The support, the care, the academics, it's been, I mean, he skips to the school bus, guys. He skips to the school bus. He's afraid of summer. Well, what about school? So we'll deal with that as it is. So that's my first reason. Secondly, though, I have an earned bias, right, from my experience in education and learning. And that is that hands-on experiential learning serves all people really, really well. Because then you can do the reflection that is the verbal learning, that is the kinesthetic, that is the oral learning, all of that supports it. But that kinesthetic hands-on piece really gives everybody at all levels something to work with, to grab on, and to make connections between what happens in the classroom and what happens in the room. So I will be an advocate from my background in creating learning, from my background in assessing learning, and to find opportunities to support whatever might come through the door. I know that there's been a lot of hands-on science in the ponds and scary stories of snakes and things lately. I love it, hate it, but love it, right? Can't do the snake, can't do the hands-on. And so I would be an advocate for really high quality learning, and in particular anything that may emerge in the hands-on way. And then third, as a new member to the community, I met Mrs. Rappa on the phone, the school secretary, and she was phenomenal. She helped me do the registration, she offered a tour through the school, it was wonderful. And yet, whether it's available or I haven't been able to access it, communication from the district and the school on just how things work, where to find forms, that sort of thing, has been hard to come by. So I will be an advocate for, the reason I wanted to be here, but is to advocate for just stronger levels of communication between the committee and the constituents that it serves. And I know not all business can be discussed until it is public, but once it is, a strong communication plan and a way to outreach to people. A new family welcome that says, don't forget, there is a form that you have to have on file in order to do that field trip that you want to do at the end of the year. Didn't know, that sort of thing. So those are my 3 reasons.
Thank you. Does anyone have any follow-up questions? Thank you, Kyle.
Really appreciate it. Absolutely, it's my pleasure. Thank you all.
And now I'd like to invite up Mr. Holmes.
Thanks. Hello. Hello, committee members. Thank you very much for having me tonight. My name is Rob Holmes. I have been a resident of the town of Berlin for about 10 years now. I have 3 daughters at Berlin Memorial, a kindergartner, first grader, and a second grader. I've lived in Massachusetts the majority of my life. I graduated from WPI in the year 2000 with a degree in mechanical engineering. I've worked in many industries in my career, doing advanced research for the first half and product development for the second half and currently. I've led the development and launch of products you might actually recognize from companies like Keurig and Thermacell and now iRobot. But regardless of where I've worked or what industry I serve, the common theme has been present throughout my career, and that's been working with teams. Specifically teams with individuals that have very different backgrounds, different priorities, different points of view, and different personalities. I've been successful in motivating groups of people to achieve common goals, despite our own unique and individual differences. I think that my ability to hear perspectives, ask kind questions, and help guide a group to consensus would be an asset to the school community. Throughout my life, service has been an important and consistent theme. It probably started when I was younger on my journey to becoming an Eagle Scout, where service is a key premise. In high school, as part of the National Honor Society, service to our community was also important. The theme of service continues throughout my family's experiences today at our church, where I teach pre-K and kindergarten Sunday school and serve our community in other ways as well. I believe service to our community is important. I've been considering how I might further serve my community for some time. I've been an active member of our town and have filled a number of informal roles, but have been searching for a place to really sink my teeth in. When the spotlight shone on our school committee during the height of the pandemic, I remember having 2 major takeaways. 1, wow, this is a really important job. And 2, I don't envy any of you. As the time passed and I contemplated where I could direct my energy, I remembered my encounters with the school committee. The hard work required of them, the thankless nature of the job, but most of all, the importance of that role for our kids. Our kids spend a significant amount of time in our school system. This experience will influence their view of education for the rest of their lives. School is a place that can inspire children to greatness. It will inform their social identities, drive curiosity, influence personalities, and underpin their means of forming relationships. It's a crucial component of our children's adolescence. Being a part of the committee that helps shape that experience for our kids feels like the absolute best place for me to direct my energy. And so for those reasons, I've decided to formally seek an opportunity to serve on the committee, and I hope you'll consider me for the role. Thank you.
I'm sitting with guys. Right. Okay. All right, same question, Ms. McLeod. Thank you for your willingness to serve. Same question as I asked Kyle. I see we have children in the elementary school at Berlin Memorial School. terrific school. That was last one. How would you seek to understand issues that affect BES, Boylston Elementary School, and Tonto Middle and High School with kids that are young?
Yeah.
Your kids, please.
Great question. Thank you. So we do have, our social network does extend into the town of Boylston. But the, 8 friends we have in Boylston probably doesn't represent the entire town fairly. So an idea I would have would be to try to partner with others on the school committee that are in Boylston where we can leverage each other's networks within our respective towns. Perhaps I could invite a member from the Boylston town to join us at social events, community events in Berlin, and potentially reciprocate the other way to try to get a sense of what's happening in the community.
That's great, thanks, Mike.
Well, thanks. Budget being one of the 3 things that we actually have some direct involvement in, what should we be focusing on next year's budget was most crucial?
Yeah, tough question. You would think that being able to listen to all these questions first would give me advantage, but Mrs. Burns and her answers is not. So again, I don't like Mrs. Burns. I don't have the context for around the budget item, so it'd be difficult and maybe short-sighted to try to take a stab at answering that without that context. But I do have extensive experience managing budgets. I understand how to allocate funds to different categories. I understand that sometimes we have to make tough commitments and tough decisions. So honestly, I think Mrs. Burns knocked it out of the park, where prioritizing what's around the mission and curriculum is priority, followed by operational needs to keep the school running.
You mind if I ask a follow-up on Julie's question first? So to Julie's question around having children in the elementary school, you spoke about the Boylston side of it, but specific to Tonto, the fact that issues that might face a middle school or high school might be different than the issues that we might see day-to-day within our elementary school, where our kids are at school. How would you seek to understand better the operations and the challenges and the successes of the middle school and high school?
You just have to go with it, right? You have to be present. Be present at events that you might not normally be invited to as a parent, but be there as a school committee member. Speak with members of the administration, speak with members of the faculty, speak with parents. Provided that it's within the guidelines of our global school committee, I would want to talk to as many members of the community, both Boylston and Berlin, as possible to get an understanding of what's on their mind.
Thank you. So to my question, the mitigation of COVID-19 has been the topic of much discussion in our meetings the past 2 years. Some of the most notable actions taken in that time were to close the schools and to require that people wear masks in school buildings. We've now seen that student performance some of our mitigations have done harm in our response to COVID-19 based on student performance data we have available to us. What would your decision-making process be as you are asked to vote on topics related to COVID mitigation in the future?
Yeah, so we've all become advocates for science, I think, these days. I certainly have been throughout my career professionally. I think what's critical is that we really assess, as many different angles of the problem as we possibly can. It can be tempting to get wrapped up in a headline or a common thread that might be popular. But I really do think it's crucial that we listen to all aspects, all members of the community that have a voice in the matter, and look at the problem comprehensively, rather than getting swept up with the trend. So it would be about listening to the community first, collecting data that not just supports a particular conclusion that we like, but really challenges it and stress tests, all potential solutions so we can choose the best.
Thank you.
So my question would be, what prompted you to seek this appointment, and what are you bringing to the table that will make you a great committee member?
Yeah, so as I mentioned in my intro, serving the community was not an if for me, it was a when. And really, it just really needed to come together once I was able to create some time in my life personally to offer that service and make a commitment. I'm at that point now. And so I really kind of assessed what opportunities there are and where my strengths might be able to be utilized the best. Given my background in managing cross-functional teams, making complicated decisions with significant consequences, I think I could bring a unique perspective to the committee, one that listens, that advocates for different viewpoints from a diverse group from the community. And, I think I would be able to use empathy specifically to really consider each and every member of the community's viewpoint, and then really try to make an objective decision.
Any follow-up questions? Thank you, Mr. Hall.
Thank you.
Now we get to the deliberation portion, and this is where we discuss the candidates. And after we discuss them, I'll ask for a motion to appoint one of our applicants to fill the vacancy. So does anyone want to begin?
No, I kind of jotted down some processes as I was listening to the key candidates answer our questions. And one of the things I want to point out that I really liked, Kyle talked about was community outreach. And I think it's an area, I know when I'm doing my own self-evaluation of the school committee, I recognize that it's a gap, a substantial gap for the school committee. And we have a lot of work to do to be able to communicate effectively with the community as a school committee. And so I certainly really appreciated her acknowledgement of that meeting. And their focus, whichever bringing that up was really great. Other thing I'll just say about Bob, I like the tenure he's had within the community. He hasn't been a resident of Berlin for 10 years. I think that gives someone a good perspective on our communities, both in Berlin and our school district. And I like a lot of what he said about working the team and being able to drive groups towards consensus. I know that we always have a goal here within the committee of, at the very least, hearing everyone out and driving towards the closest we can come to consensus. We don't always get there, but I think that skill is one that we certainly value and could benefit from.
Anyone else want to add anything?
Yeah, I would be still. Not, Kyle's very, Kyle's energy, get involved, learn, great. And Bob spoke a lot towards that community feel, leadership, team building, which, as we've seen over the last 2-3 months, is huge. It really makes the work better, easier, smoother. So from our self-evaluation last year, the communication outreach was in there, team building, also part of that, so I like that approach.
I think you're both outstanding. I think that for Kyle, I love the being an advocate for hands-on learning and high quality learning, especially now we're coming off COVID and there was so much learning done on the devices, and that's really trickled into the classrooms substantially. So I like that that's going to be a focus area of Kyle's. For Bob, there were so many things that I just pulled toward. I love that service was never an if, it was a when. I love the idea of using empathy to make objective decisions, especially now where it's very easy to not do that, to do the other. His background of working with diverse teams is very appealing. And I liked how, Adam, you asked a follow-up question to mine. How will you understand, to get a little more into detail, how will you understand that middle high school? Because when I was in elementary school, you just can't understand middle high school until you're present in it. And that's no fault of anybody's, that's just how it is. But I thought his answer was great, that he said he would be present at events as a school committee member where he wouldn't otherwise be invited. And I think that also speaks to that bridging the gap between our community and our district, which I think too Just what Kyle was saying, just we're lacking in that communication piece, so I like that.
I really liked your budget question, Mike. That's a really hard question. I don't know how I would have answered that prior to being on the school committee. I like that.
So more
I liked that Kyle has worked for nonprofits, and I also liked Bob's experience as well, working within companies. And it's just going to be a very hard decision because I feel like they're both extremely qualified. And it's just tough because they're both so likable too. So I guess at this point, are there any other, does anybody want to do any more deliberation?
I just make a comment on both of those. I'm pleased to see parents in both of you stepping up and wanting to do the school committee. It's incredibly important that parents who have students in our school district are willing to step up and take these roles, and I applaud you both for that, because it's the right thing in my opinion, but on top of that, it's difficult sometimes, because you're gonna have to make decisions that may not agree with your child's best friend and what their parents think, and that's a challenging thing to take on sometimes, and so whatever ends up happening, best of luck to both of you.
Does anyone want to make a motion?
I'll move to nominate Ms. Holmes.
Is there a second? Okay, is there any discussion?
I'll say at this point, I never met Bob until today, but I will comment to say that back in the preps of 2021, when decisions were being made about reopening the schools and when to reopen schools and how to reopen the schools, I distinctly remember that Bob wrote a letter to the school committee at that time. I remember that letter got posted on Facebook. I remember I emailed Bob myself, out of the blue, having never met him before, and said, you should put your name in for the school committee whenever there's an election. It's going to be in November, by the way, so whoever gets appointed, everyone can run in November, and have an opportunity. But I think that I recognized prior to myself being on the school committee, and prior to being opening, that the way he approached the commentary he made at that school committee meeting, when you and Mike and Julie, I think at the time, were considering when to probably open the schools, was something I valued as a parent of the district or a future parent of the district. And so that plays a role in my interest in supporting it.
I would actually like to add that reminded me a lot of you, because when we were going through the throes of COVID, and you were very intent on making sure that we had our election, which was the right thing to do, we had a nice back and forth with one another. And it really shows character when you're discussing difficult topics that are really, can be very emotional, to be able to be rational and kind is a big deal. So I thought that was interesting. I thought the same letter.
To reiterate what Adam said, you're going to face decisions that are tough because your kids being in school, and all three of us have kids in the same class. So it's a tough call. A call has to be made. But again, like Adam said, there will be an election, so please participate.
All right. So with that, we will move to a vote. All in favor of appointing Mr. Robert Holmes to fill the vacant seat in Berlin on the school committee?
Aye.
Opposed? I'm an aye as well. Welcome, Mr. Holmes, and Mrs. Burns. I'm really sad that we don't have two spots because you're phenomenal. It's okay. I hope you'll run in November. Thank you. And Christy, just a point of order, will we talk to Bob and explain to him what his next steps are?
Yeah, I'll get in touch tomorrow.
Excellent. Thank you. So we are going to move on to our post-New York City field trip report. Mr. Minahan, he's got some students with him. Come on up.
So hello, everybody, school committee members. We had a trip to New York City on the 13th of May, which was like 10 days ago. I came before the school committee the last time and proposed the idea And I had a number of interesting questions about delays and how we would deal with that. And we had a brief delay on the way home, but other than that, everything ran really smoothly. And Caden and Rebecca and Sydney were 3 of the 6 students on the trip. And they can field any questions that people have about the experience, what they learned. We open it up to anybody. Anybody.
What was your favorite part? What did you do that was the best part of this trip, education-wise and fun-wise?
Either the art museum or the food. So, food was everywhere and easy to come by and cheap, so that was awesome for me. And the exhibits at the art museum was pretty cool to see.
Yeah, I was just there Friday, actually. You're right. It was great.
I don't have anything specific, but I've never been to New York before this trip, so just to be there, walking around even was just really interesting. And they do not lie about New York pizza being really good. It was
I think my favorite part, like fun-wise, was definitely the pizza. The pizza was really good. But like the going to the art museum was really cool because you could see a lot of the stuff. Like I've seen some of the like works online, but seeing them in person is like a different experience. So it's really cool to see them like in person.
Awesome. Congratulations.
And I would just say, since it's open to everybody, my favorite part, Sydney told me about a painting, which is The Death of Socrates, which is by Jacques Louis David. And it's at the Metropolitan Museum of Art, and she had read up on it. And I realized that this painting was in the textbook that we got this year. So that was kind of a neat connection. And I also saw their painting by the same artist that happened to be on the cover of a collection of plays by Euripides that I read during 7th grade this year. So I read Hecuba as part of the change in the curriculum standards. We were incorporating ancient Greece and Rome, and so we read this play. And on the cover of the particular copy that I have is another painting by Jacques Louis David, The Morning of Andromache, who is the wife of Hector, who is a great Trojan hero. And so to see both those paintings up close and have a connection through the text was really nice. And for Sydney to say, oh, she had gone out and researched that, there was a very nice connection that was, you know, all the things that we are trying to do, build relationships and connections. And so that was very nice and a favorite part of mine. Other questions?
How about you went to the 9/11 exhibit? I just got to go a few years ago. It was very powerful. Any reflections on that?
there was this room where they had the names of all the people and these like big screens all over where you could press the names and it showed their background and it just showed that they were people too. And just for them to say like 2,000 something people died doesn't really mean anything if I wasn't alive, we weren't alive when that happened. But to be able to see the people and their families and everything just made it a lot more realistic.
Yeah, like what Sydney said, since we were like 4 before it was happening, I don't really feel like we had like any like memories connected to the event. So the 9/11 like memorial, it was like really like cool to see all this stuff. There, like they had all these like pillars and like foundation, and also like the room with all the people. It really connects numbers and like humanizes the event more for us.
Yeah, I think they did an amazing job honoring the lives lost during 9/11, and it was just nice to see everything put together so nicely.
I have a question. So Mr. Manningham came in and he proposed this field trip and he talked about getting on a plane, which normally we do buses, and flying down to New York City. I want to know, so I remember dropping Rebecca and Sydney off at 6:30 in the morning, I think it was. And then Mrs. Social got Sydney and Rebecca back a little after midnight. So my question to you would be, in the future, if there were field trips like this, do you think that the school committee should approve them? And how did you feel about the experience? Do you think it's something that other people would want to experience?
Definitely. I think the plane was pretty cool. Because I know some kids haven't been on planes in years. I think one of the kids hasn't been on since he was like maybe a baby. So this was like his first real time being on a plane. And so like sharing that with the class and the peer, that's pretty cool. And especially going to New York from Worcester with your class, that's a pretty awesome experience.
And it wasn't, honestly, it wasn't that expensive either. It went really smooth, like all aspects went really smooth. The only thing that wasn't smooth was like the delay, but it was only like it wasn't very long. It could have been worse. So I think definitely we should be doing these things more because I got a lot out of it.
Yeah, I agree. I feel like because of COVID and like lockdown, we missed a lot of things that we could have experienced. And this was like I think my first field trip since 7th grade, maybe, or 8th grade. So, yeah, it was really fun.
I think it's just awesome that you birthed this idea and had the kids go, you guys went. I think it's great. Did you ride the subway?
Yes.
Yeah.
I kind of said New York City as a joke when he said we should take a field trip. But I mean, he was so like enthusiastic about it. And then we all thought of new and exciting things we could do in New York. And we realized the Federal Reserve's in New York. So that was our main kick to go. But we're just,
It's great. It's so great. And you all speak so well in front of a group of people.
it's a little scary. I know there's a camera right there. So it's not me. Yeah, my mother's watching.
Yeah. She does tonight.
Anyone else?
I just wanted to know, what surprised you about New York City? Like, when you went down there thinking one thing about it, what change did you have after you came away from being down there for a day, or did you have one?
Yeah, it was all, I thought it, well, being from Boylston, biggest city I've ever been in was like Boston, which is this big compared to New York City, apparently. And so it was like culture shock, and it was just like everything that like I've seen in movies is kind of like it, but it's just like more like tame and not as wild.
Yeah, everyone that we saw, like, I was kind of expecting on the New York subway that everyone would just be weird and they would be. Everyone was like, they've done it a million times. Everyone was just like, it just seemed like it was their home, and it was just interesting to see that because it was not normal for me when I was sitting on the subway.
Yeah, I thought there was gonna be more rats.
Anyone else?
Yeah, I just want to say, I think it's a great idea what you did, and I hope that you guys as students become, I don't know what grades you're in, but become ambassadors to your other students in the school, encourage them to do things like this, encourage teachers to bring up these ideas, whether it's New York, Boston, whatever city it is, and there's the best way to learn and to grow yourself is to get outside of your home and your comfort zone, experience the world. You guys have seen that firsthand now, even New York, and there's plenty of rats there, don't worry. But I hope you become ambassadors for the rest of the school and the community and the towns and the teachers to encourage more like this going forward. Sounds great. And I think you'll find an encouraging school committee who will accept your ideas.
And Keaton, I think you're gonna graduate in a week or so, right?
Yes, June 5th, Mr. Sarah?
312.
Sacred Heart University. I know it's messed up on that.
Sacred Heart, you said?
Yes.
Congratulations.
That's great.
Thank you so much for coming and speaking. We really, really appreciate it. I'm so excited that you did this. And I mean, they're gonna have memories and experiences, and it's real world learning. So thank you.
Thank you to the committee and to everybody who was involved for their support. It was, a team effort from start to finish. And thank you for the opportunity to come and speak. And as you say, to be ambassadors for this concept and to try and do this again in the future. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Great. Thank you. Appreciate it. Amazing.
So we're gonna move on to item number, it's under reports. We're going to move on to Mr. Zaney.
So the first thing I want to talk about is the Director of Finance and Operations position. As you know, Mr. Conley will be leaving us shortly. We miss him. And we went through an extensive search and considered a number of qualified candidates for the position. But in the end, hands down, the unanimous choice was Mrs. Nancy Kuniski. She's here today. And Ms. Kuniski is a graduate of Western College in Springfield. She's been a business manager since 2012. Worked in a couple positions, currently a sitting business manager. She's held several financial positions in the private sector before that, in the banking industry also. She's licensed by the DESE, right? Yeah. And she's a member of Masco and Society for HR Management. So, would you like to say a couple words?
Sure.
Before you take the barrage of,
Sure.
you have taken the sword and shield, but Mr. Burns gets that.
Great. Well, I'm Nancy Kuniski. Thank you very much. I was fortunate enough to spend a couple hours with Bob today. I can tell that I have big shoes to fill. You can see he's done a great job with the finances. So thank you for showing me the ropes a little bit today. But I look forward to hopefully joining you, and thank you. Thank you very much.
Are there any questions? Okay, could I have a motion to approve the appointment of Mrs. Nancy Kuniski? Is that right? Kuniski, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
As the new Director of Finance and Operations as of July 1st, 2022. So, we have a second?
Second.
Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
I'm an aye as well. Opposed? Motion to approve the appointment of Mrs. Nancy Kuniski as the new Director of Finance and Operations as of July 1st, 2022 passes.
I think this is where you said she can go.
Oh, yes, actually, yes, you can go. Don't feel like you have to stay.
You have a long day, and I
Yes.
know 2 hours of Bob can be like. You must be exhausted.
Thank you.
Why don't you ask your admin team whether that I should be complaining or you should be complaining?
So truly, if you feel like
I'll go.
it's grateful.
Yeah.
So also, before I get to my goals, I would like to acknowledge a retiring principal, Diane Tusseri, who's been here for 32 years. I don't know if there's a teacher, a young teacher who's been hired in the past 5 or 10 years who works in here, went to school here, who didn't have Diane as a, I don't know if that makes you feel old enough. They all have, just the amount of things that Diane has done for the district. Just 32 years, and I think all except 1 year in this district, which is a testament to Diane's dedication to this school and to this district, and also to our district, that someone would want to stay for that long. She's somewhat of a historian in the district. If you want to know something about the old school, anything that went on here since 1989, Diane's the person to ask. So we're going to miss her. She started as a physical education teacher and coach and dean of students. When there was a dean of students and principal. So we really are going to miss you, Diane, but we wish you luck. And, we know you have a lot of years to go.
Thank you.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Okay. That was the fun part, and now I'm gonna do my goals now, and I know one committee member last year said, don't read all this stuff, it's very boring. And Mike, I have to admit, you were right. So, so when I used to teach and I'd do a lesson, sometimes I'd have to say, I'm really boring myself here, let's do something else. I won't go through and read it. So I think you've got packets like this, so it'll be easy for you to follow, easier than online. Goal 1 was the equity goal, and I've talked about this a number of times. This is a goal we started a couple of years ago. And so the goal, my goal this year was to broaden the sphere of influence related to equity by including staff from the district and to create a district equity statement. And so that's really what the work has been for the last few years. And this year we've increased the team. We initially started off with just the leadership team. And what we're trying to do is just basically trying to find out, what does it mean to us as a district before we start going out to the teachers? Like, what do we see equity meaning? And we realized that we really had to make it personalized, that we were gonna, find out if there were any inequities in our district and then attack those first. And so one of the things that happened this year is I worked with the principals to ask them to look in the schools and find places where you think there might be an inequity. And then treat it as a science project, just have a hypothesis and then see if you can prove it or not and collect all the data first. So that really was the equity work this year. So in terms of evidence, I said we would have an equity statement, and that is in your packet under goal number 1. First page is the meetings we've had this year. Second page is the equity statement. And again, one of the things we did as a leadership team, we put together a rough draft. And the idea was to then take that rough draft, bring it to the bigger group, and have them refine it with the help of Teachers 21. And so we've come up with this. Of course, it's a working document, and again, we didn't want to overpromise, but at the same time, we think that we're a small district. We should be flexible. We should be able to give students the individual attention they need, and if there are inequities, we should deal with it and not have any preconceived idea of where those inequities are. So, and the principal's goals were fantastic. ACE's goals in there. He looked at ELL students and whether we over-identify ELL students in special education, and that's a big topic these days. A lot of times, a language issue is diagnosed as a disability if you're not careful. So we don't want our students to be diagnosed. Not speaking English is not a disability. So he's had some interesting results with that. It's in there. I'm sure you had a chance to take a look at it. John had an interesting goal. There's another one that's would seem like it'd be common sense, but is there equity in the way you call on students? When you ask a question, it's it's an informal sort of testing, and so you want to make sure that there's no inequities there. So John looked at things like, does the teacher call on all kids on the left side of the class or the right side of the class? Call on mostly males, call on mostly females. A big one, does the teacher call on kids who always have their hand raised? Because we know from, national data, if the kid who doesn't raise his hand is always high. Right? And that's not good. You have to draw that student out, kind of in a meaningful way, not embarrass the student, but that's a student that can get behind, and you have to observe these things and you have to point these things out for teachers. And I'll tell you this story from my own background when I was a teacher that my department head observed me and said, you always call on people on the left side of the classroom. And I realized the reason I did, because I had an overhead projector, which was high tech back then. I used to write my notes on it, and it would be reflected on the board. It was a big deal. But because I'm right-handed, I always turned this way, and the light was bright, so I couldn't look into it and see the kids on this side of it. So if you wanted to just hide, which a lot of them did in my class, you would sit over here because they knew I couldn't see them. So I never thought about it until somebody called it out. And then Diane's was looked at inequities in terms of gender, And we've done a lot of work in the last couple of years with science, technology, and engineering. And there are some 20 years we've been working on this now, and there are still some places where some groups are, some genders are underrepresented. And so that's one of the things that Diane and Sally looked at. And so the idea this year was to kind of do, not necessarily a run-through, but take it in stages. Have a hypothesis, collect the data, see if what you're thinking was correct, and then next year, the follow-up on that goal is going to be to, okay, now what do we do about that? So now that they have 2 people in the building that can act as advisors for this, they can start, those 2 people can start, doing professional development, can start working with the faculty, and they can start working on these projects. And there's no shortage of them here. It's all small things. Look at John's project. It seems just, again, so common sense, but it has a profound impact on students. So those are the kind of equity things that we look at. And I only say that because I know one of the other things I was supposed to produce here is an equity, the equity survey. It's not in here, but you do have a copy of it. One of the comments in there, like, when I'm not going to answer questions, or, if there's some kind of hidden meaning, and it's really just trying to collect data. And if you don't know us, if you just look at the survey, it does kind of seem like, well, maybe they're up to something, and especially with the politics around this stuff. But that's not the case. And if you look at our work, our work is focused around just this district and what we see. There's an activity going on someplace else, somebody else will deal with them. Our job is to deal with the kids and staff and the community and our 2 districts. And so we stand by that. So that's the equity goal. See if there's anything else I was supposed to. The second goal was the principal walkthrough. That I actually started, I think, the second year I was here. Had to put it on hold for a couple of years with COVID. But we started revived it this year. And really, what you want ultimately is you want the principals to, get into the habit of going and just getting out of their chairs, going into the classroom, having, developing a routine where they have follow conversations with the teachers. The teachers get used to them being in there, and our principals all go into the classrooms, but, so that the teacher knows when the principal leaves, not just when the superintendent is there, that there's going to be a follow-up meeting. We had a 4-point survey, that there's going to be a survey to say, okay, what do you think about, what do you as a teacher see, what was going on when I came in, what was your impression on it? And follow-up meetings with the teacher, and then take that data to then use it as a springboard for what the next walkthrough is going to be. And the principals did things a little bit differently, which is okay. John and Age changed up their focal areas a little bit. Diane concentrated on basically the same ones for all of our meetings. You can do it either way, just a sort of a matter of preference. It depends what each principal is trying to get at in the school. There might be something that we see as a weakness that they've been observing, so that's going to be the focus area.
Can I ask you a question that I don't need to wait till after?
Okay.
So the Tonto walkthroughs, were those separated by middle and then high school? Because I read on there, it just seemed like there were only 3 for those observation dates.
Okay,
How did that happen?
so Diane decided.
Yeah.
So what happens with the program, this is based on the Research for Better Teaching, the superintendent supervision of principals. And so it's like a gradual release. So when we did these originally, we'd sit down, we'd come up with these focal points, and then we decide, we had a couple other systems in place, but we basically decided, okay, who are we going to observe based on the focus area. So, and then the program as you go on, so this is really like the 3rd year we've done this. the principals start doing that stuff. And so what they would do is, depending on what they see going on in the schools, because they see it every day, they would decide what teachers, so if they're seeing something in the middle school, what the middle school teachers, to focus on middle school teachers that day. Is there something at the high school that they want to take a look at, we'll focus on high school teachers. And sometimes it's just a mix, and honestly, MCAS, sometimes it's like, we want to go there, but if we don't do it today, it's going to be 2 weeks, so let's kind of mix and match today. And so it kind of looks like a jumble, but there's some thoughtfulness that goes into it, just depends on what they're seeing, and so they really control that.
So, okay, so how do we see that? Is what I guess is what because I looked in the driveway, I was trying to understand, and I only saw there were 3 observations.
Well, I meet with each of them once a month.
Right, yep.
So you won't, because I would have to put names here.
Oh, no, not the same, I was just, instead of, it said teacher 1, teacher 2, teacher 3.
Right.
So there were 3 observations done, and I'm just wondering if those observations are done. So how is the middle school getting observed?
No, you
during
wouldn't
that month?
know, you wouldn't know, and I wouldn't,
Okay.
I can tell you that those were middle school.
If they were or not middle school, so.
I know they were, I was there, but.
Oh, yeah, great, okay, that's great.
But we wouldn't necessarily tell you that. It's just, we don't make a distinction between whether we go to middle school or high school. You might.
So I guess, my question would be, why wouldn't you make that distinction? They're separate.
I do. I wouldn't make it for you, because then you might be able to identify who we're talking about here. And
What you would do with the elementary schools with the same principal, I'm just confused.
well, at the elementary school, it's all one level.
Right, but I would still potentially know, not like I would.
Yeah, that's why we do it there too. So that's why we try to like, there's one of them in there that I'm thinking, if somebody was in the schools enough, they know who this was. And so, I have to be on sort of on the fence on what I give you and what I don't give you, because some of it, I say I'm gonna give evidence, and then I look at it and I'm like, well, I don't want to start putting lines through everything. And I realize that someone's in school enough, they'll be able to figure out who this is. And so, I sort of walk a line when that happens. So, but I'm not answering your question, I can tell. So what is?
I guess my question is, if you're doing walkthrough observations, to meet these student learning goals, and this is coming to us as part of the evaluation, help me evaluate based on that if I don't know what was being evaluated, what level.
Focus areas?
No, what level, I can't speak to the middle school.
Well, how would you know anyway, even if I told you? How would you be
That's
able
all I would
to,
know.
how would you be able to determine if it's middle school, high school?
Because I think they're 2 different almost schools, right? Even though they're not here. because we're one district.
That's true, but that's not my job. My job with them is to develop procedures for them to be able to go in and make observations. Their job is to decide in their building who they're gonna observe and what they're gonna look at. So, and my part of the goal is to help them develop those procedures and those routines to be able to go in and make those observations. So when I go in is not the only time they go in.
Sure.
So the goal is that if I can do this work, and Cal does similar work, that they develop those procedures and those protocols so that when we're not there, they can go. So it's really irrelevant who I see when I go in. I want to see a development of a protocol. So I want to see them sending out surveys to teachers. I want them to do that work.
Would that protocol differ whether it was middle school or high
No.
school? Okay.
No, it's the same, and it's the same for elementary too.
Okay.
Yeah.
So maybe it's more an equity thing, like you see in middle school as much as you see in high school, as much as you see in elementary school.
Yeah, that's what my.
I do, and then, so in their buildings, obviously they're gonna focus on, we have another system that gets put into place. I don't want to talk too much about it, but basically what happens, so a teacher who needs more help, the principals will see, maybe like they see them once a week. And then there's a group of teachers who, they're okay, and they maybe see them once every 3 weeks. And then there are teachers who, you know, they have rock stars, and so, but you're gonna keep an eye on them, but you don't see them as much. So they make that decision. So when I go in, all I'm trying to do is work with them to develop routines. Who they see, how they do that actual evaluation. It doesn't matter what level it is to me. So because I only go in to do these formal things with them, I do each of them once a month. So it's even irrelevant to me. I already know, like, that last one was from the last observation, so I remember that. But if I were to look at the other ones, if I didn't see the names, I wouldn't know, and it's not important to me either. My part of it as superintendent is to create a sustainable protocol for principals to use to go in and make observations on teachers. It's going to be the same at every level. They vary in levels. Like I said, Diane thought it was more important to have consistent focus areas that she saw multiple times. John and Ace had multiple focus areas, so it's going to vary. So I don't really make that distinction between those grade levels. It's just, are they able to develop those routines? So when I get the surveys, I'm like, well, you even sending the surveys out. Are they getting feedback from the teachers? Are they having those conversations? That's really the important thing.
Next question, that. So as I look at the log I have here of walkthroughs that were conducted and corresponding survey responses, I look, for example, at Tonto and see that there were walkthroughs done in December, January, March, and May, but I only see survey response related to the walkthrough in January.
I just gave you a sampling of them, just to show you what I was trying to do with them. So, I wanted to show.
So the process was followed consistently across all regions.
Yeah, and so, the evidence was to develop, like, so if you look at one of the action stuff.
Yeah,
develop a 4-point,
Scale.
So a 4-point scale, have an open response, and then, and then it's just another feedback loop. So you can find that in there, you can see it, that they've actually developed that.
Okay, we're not going to see all of them.
No, just a sampling. So you're not going to see all of their stuff, but just what I said that I was going to provide sampling. So that's that goal. And again, I think that, we've come a long way on it, although I think that, COVID is really, we have been further along on this than we would have without COVID. So that's goal 2. Goal 3, this was, I think we talked about this one in January. It's the one I had the most issue with because, so this is my professional practice goal, and when I set these goals earlier, I know Susan did a lot of work with me on them, and it was, I try to find a professional practice goal. I'm sort of beyond the point in my career where, taking courses and doing that kind of stuff. And one of the things, she said, and it made a lot of sense, why don't you pick something that's really appropriate to where you are and, maybe your post-career, whether it be 2, 3, 4 years down the road. And so, I thought about it. I've been in regional schools for a long time. I like regional schools, oddly enough, regional districts. And I thought that would be some work that I would do when I retired. And my mentor is actually the executive director at MAS, the Massachusetts Association of Regional Schools, close by. And it's probably something I'll be involved with when I retire. And so I wanted to start doing work in it. But it was a weird year because, as I said, usually there's more things that are offered, there's things that are offered for teachers. And this year, really, not so much. You see the list here is all things that are Chapter 70, funding, leadership and organization. These are all end of year report training. I know Bob did that one year. They have a superintendent, their superintendent, what do you call it, like a mentoring course that that I went through early on. But not a lot of stuff for teachers. So I've gone to the meetings and, provided what was available for administrators. And I'll continue with this next year. I'm hoping that, we can expand this and offer stuff for teachers. That was one of my action steps that I wasn't able to get to. And I think I said that in January, that I was not going to be able to get to that. So this one, it did, what I said I was going to do, but I would say as a professional practice was, I was hoping more for myself than I get out of it. That's it.
Does anyone have any questions for them?
Are you personal, equitable,
Yes.
or what were teachers that you continue?
That's a good question. That's a good question. We brought them on because we thought, okay, let's bring someone on who's not us, who has expertise here. They did some great stuff. We didn't always agree with them. We did a couple of years of work with them. We think we're far enough along that we don't have to bring them back. We have them on queue just in case we need them. There is one of the consultants that we thought about bringing back as a speaker, but we think we're far enough along that we can at least begin some of our work. We've collected a lot of data this year. I know Julia had asked questions about the equity report and what we're going to do with all of that. And so we're going to put together a 3-year improvement plan. We've collected all this data. Now we're going to just start analyzing it and figure out what exactly are we going to do with this. We're going to have a student survey in the fall, and we asked about that. We don't know what it's going to look like. To answer your question, we don't have anything scheduled for next year. We can always call them if we need them, but we're going to try to sort of make it our own from here on in and see where that goes. Is that something you want us to continue with them, or is that?
Well, if you answered yes, the next question was cost. How much it spends?
Yeah, they're not cheap, none of them are. So, and that's the other reason. We think we've got enough information that we can sort of do this. Again, we'll know once we analyze it. Once we start analyzing all these reports and all the data and our equity statement. So.
I just have a comment. I like what the principals chose to look at in the classrooms, because I think those are really important issues. And especially in our district, I think it was thinking outside the box as to what the traditional equity surveys would be, or what you'd be looking for in a classroom, and I thought that great.
So I also want to mention my goal was to focus on the principal, but Sally also had a science and technology goal, life science, technology, and engineering, as we all had at the goals.
Thank you, Jeff.
Thank you.
Mr. Conry, our current Director of Finance and Operations, will give a business office update.
I only one, I had a lot of items last meeting, so keep it brief this time. So just as you know, our budgets were approved by the towns. And it was a long process, not necessarily an easy process. And I just wanted to thank first the administrative team for their work and patience and kind of working through some of the challenges that we had. They put a lot of thought into their schools, and we can't always support everything that we want to do, and we had to make some difficult decisions, and we arrived at one that was feasible to the towns, while also kind of enhancing what supports we're providing to our students. So I also want to thank the school committee. I know you had a lot of questions about the process, and we appreciate your support, and particularly in coming to some of the meetings we've had with towns. find that's helpful, and would encourage you to continue to do that. I think it helps in obtaining support from towns, as opposed to just administrators. Having folks who live in the towns be there to be part of discussion is helpful. I also wanted to publicly thank, and I said it to them personally, but the select boards and the FinComs of both towns. They don't have an easy job either, kind of balancing tax considerations, funding they're getting, on their funding sources. I think particularly this year, it was a little bit of a shift, where the challenge was more with Berlin than Boylston. And so I just wanted to acknowledge their work and kind of give and take with us to arrive at something that was workable. I would also, one of the things I plan to do for the next meeting is just to kind of outline some longer term considerations. I do believe that the challenges that lie ahead would be a little bit more prevalent in Berlin than Boylston, primarily because of some potential commercial developments in Boylston, because of a decline in vocational acceptances from Boylston students. It's getting harder for them to get into ASPID, which is unfortunate for those who want to go there. And if they do want to go, they probably have to think about whether they want to travel somewhere further. And I'm not sure if that's going to be something that's going to do. So there's a decline in vocational expenses that may be an opportunity to get more support for the Boston budget, particularly the elementary school, which is a little bit below peer groups in terms of per pupil spending. And I know we've looked at some things at Tonto as well. So I do see that as a potential future challenge. I plan to kind of outline some things for the next meeting, so you have a record, and so Nancy has a record of more structural financial issues. I'm not going to be advocating for resources the schools needs. That's the administrative team's job. But things like funding for OPEB and reducing school choice usage, which you've heard about, and how to do that in a gradual way so you don't have a budget shock in a given year. I also want to just mention too that the budget's done. We start this in October, and this is a long process, and things happen and change. So, so I don't want to have you worry about this because it's going to be solved, and it's pretty much solved already. But we've had things come up that are going to cost money that we did not budget. And those surprises happen throughout the year. Sometimes it's good news, sometimes it's not, expense-wise. And so there are some challenges that have arisen, and some unbudgeted special education costs. I just wanted to give a shout out to our special ed department, particularly Michelle. Janelle and I talked about applying for extraordinary circuit breaker relief. We have 2 tuitions we didn't plan for. So you can get extraordinary relief when your costs increase a certain amount in a given year. So when I talked to Janelle, we thought, well, let's go ahead and through and try to apply. I thought we might get about $5,000 doing some quick miles, some costs would be eligible. So it was going to be a lot of work, $5,000. But we said, well, Janelle, you're new. I'm kind of new. Karen used to do this. Why don't we learn? Well, Michelle did all the work. And we came up with $85,000. So, all the work we did in the budget is fine, but things happen and change. And, John and Ace and Diana all had different things come up that we end up having to find ways to cover for. So, fortunately for this year, a lot of that came through. It was supported by Michelle doing the work to get us an additional $85,000 in emergency circuit breaker relief. So I just wanted to give her a shout out. She does the work very quietly and efficiently. And I don't know if she gets publicly recognized. I just wanted to give her a shout out for that.
Would you buy that much?
Oh, God, don't forget that. There's an alligator arm.
So that's my report.
All right, I would like to invite Principal Tusier to share an update on Tonto Middle and High School.
Thank you. I'd like to first begin by talking about our math course sequence for algebra at Tonto. So in 2017, the Massachusetts Curriculum Frameworks was revised for mathematics. And so working with Carol, and our math department chair, Francine Gleason, as well as our math coach, Rebecca Cox. In the middle school, we looked at beginning to align our current Tonto curriculum to that of the revised curriculum frameworks, to make sure that our students had a strong foundation for algebra. What we were seeing, and COVID, I think, really brought it more to light, was that with beginning in the 6th grade, having, differentiation in the 6th grade with an advanced math 6, and then having our students then going into, some of our students going into Algebra 1, what we were seeing, and I think if you take a look at our MCAS for math in the middle school, we were seeing students with gaps in curriculum, because what they were essentially doing was trying to fit in curriculum in grades 6, 7, and 8 into 2 years. And that was creating gaps. And then what then happens is the students then progress up to high school, where if they don't have a strong algebraic foundation, it catches up to them. And then what ends up happening is then the teachers up at the high school level have to do some remedial work prior to them being able to get to their curriculum. So it's almost like a chain reaction. And so we are looking at, and we'll begin aligning next year our pathway to match that of the state's recommended pathway. I think some of the questions and concerns that I think some parents may have is, well, then how is my child going to get to AP statistics? And that is still, that is obviously still achievable. As stated in the documentation and the pathway, that students would be able to, when they get up to high school at certain levels, be able to double up in mathematics. Currently, we do have students that double up for a variety of reasons. And that would still be available to them. And next year really is more of a transition year. So I know that, there was a concern that, students have, in the 8th grade going into 9th grade had already selected their courses for next year, as were, students in grades 9 through 11. That is not impacted. The change that we see for the 2022-2023 school year will be in incoming grades 6, 7, and 8. And all of the courses that are being revised and realigned are, the curriculum is already approved within the courses. It's just sort of how we sequence those courses, each year. And does anyone have any questions about that?
I have one.
Sure.
So you see on the pathways, in the drive, so you're getting rid of for next year, and I think it's a great idea. We should definitely write about the foundations and then going up to high school, so I have that. So there's gonna be no 6th grade, it's just gonna be all 6th. Everyone's at the same level.
Correct.
7th grade, you're gonna have a regular 7, and then an accelerated 7,
Yes.
no algebra. I think.
Well,
I know.
there are algebra concepts taught
Inside.
within that, yes.
Okay,
It's just not being called algebra, because really Algebra 1 is a high school course.
Right.
Typical, it's typically a high school course. So even if students take, for instance, even if students take, those students that are taking Algebra 1 now in 8th grade.
Yeah.
When they get up into high school, their high school transcript doesn't say Algebra 1. It will say geometry, Algebra 2, probably pre-calculus, and then either calculus or AB, because they have been taking it in middle school.
Okay. So then these current 7th graders that have picked their 8th grade classes, if that Algebra 1, I mean, yes, the Algebra 1 and 7th is no longer offered.
Yeah.
They're just being moved right into accelerated math then instead of that Algebra.
It'll be, right, it'll be dependent upon, the assessments and and the recommendations. They have done quite a bit of assessing of the students in sort of a readiness exam, because of COVID, we're seeing the teachers not being able to get through all of the curriculum that would typically we'd be able to get through in like an Algebra 1.
Yep.
So they're gonna, basically, the current students now that are in Algebra 1 in 7th grade, they will take Algebra 1 Part B in 7th grade, so that they make sure that they have that foundation and they finish up the remainder of that algebra curriculum that they were not able to get to, because we then just said, okay, well, that's fine, and we're gonna put you into geometry. When they get up into Algebra 2, it's not gonna be good.
Yeah. So then where do the kids go from accelerated math 7 to 8th grade?
So some of the more advanced students, so the current students,
Yeah, so
current 8th graders?
current 7th graders right now in accelerated math.
Yeah,
So that's Algebra 1 essentially, right?
Yeah, Algebra
Right now.
1, they would go to Algebra 1 Part B.
Okay,
Yeah.
Just to solidify
Correct.
that foundation. Okay, great.
To finish up curriculum that was not able to be completed,
Mhm.
and to solidify those skills prior to them moving on to geometry and then Algebra 2.
Okay, yes, I see, okay. Okay, this isn't starting in high school until 23.
Let me see, so we're
2020.
2022.
Right.
Yes, correct,
Okay,
correct,
all right. I think it's great,
yes.
makes sense. Thank you.
I'd like to also, in my report, just give a recap. I'd like to thank Matt Picaro for doing all the crunching of the numbers for us. We really had a exciting year in athletics this past year. It started with the end of the close of the school year last year, where our baseball, softball, and lacrosse teams all made the district tournaments last year. Baseball won the District 3 Division 4 tournament and played in the state semifinals as well. During this year alone, we had 475 students participate in 38 sports. And that's with a part-time athletic director. That is an amazing accomplishment. In the fall, Tonto had over 200 students participate in sports in the fall. And some of the students participated on the West Boylston's football team. We also had West Boylston join us for golf and cross-country teams in our co-op program. And the fall season was one of the most successful in Tohoto school history. Girls cross-country team placed first in the inaugural Central Mass tournament. Field hockey, boys soccer, and girls soccer all placed first in their league. Boys soccer team first league title in 15 years. The girls soccer team hosted a Final 8 appearance in the state tournament, in which they went into overtime. And the winter, again, brought great athletic success. 88 students participated in middle school JV and varsity basketball, cheer, and ice hockey co-op with Hudson. And the boys and girls basketball team both qualified and gained a couple of wins in the state tournament. The girls basketball team won its first league title in the history of the school. And right now we have 175 student athletes participating in the spring. A number of our track students participated in the state meet. And baseball ranked number 2 in the state, softball number 7, and lacrosse number 13 will all be hosted to begin the first ever Central Mass spring tournaments. So it really is an exciting year, and I think it's great that the kids are we were able to get back in full swing and have, as many students as we had participate in athletics. And I'd like to thank the coaching staff as well and all of our student athletes. And then the last page, you can see upcoming events. This is probably our busiest time of the year at the school. This last month of school is a whirlwind with a lot of things going on. So I just added some of those important dates. And as Kate had mentioned, graduation is June 5th at 2 p.m. in the Tonto Gymnasium.
Thank you. Thank you, Diane. I would like to invite Principal Thompson to share an update on the flows in elementary school.
Thank you, Mark. I want to apologize for my voice and for the mask. If there's a germ in the elementary school, it finds its way to the principal's office every time. I do have a negative COVID test, but out of caution and concern for everybody, I'm wearing a mask tonight. I will try to keep it brief. Hopefully my voice will hold out. I wanted to talk a little bit. We have completed MCAS. Yay. We celebrated with an ice cream party courtesy of the superintendent. I wanted to just comment on the perseverance.
Wait.
I'd like to comment on the perseverance.
Try this tomorrow. And it'll be better.
So we finished MCAS on June 8th. We have grades 6, 7, 8, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10. So we'll talk tomorrow. Christy, come on.
Sorry, boss.
You know what, we used the whole ice cream budget and we still.
We had a lot of ice cream.
Part of our wellness policy.
Can you tell who's retiring?
Sorry.
I'm sorry, that's okay. I'd like to comment on the perseverance like this showed. They worked well beyond the minimum requirements that they needed to. Walking around, you can see a lot of them using the strategies that the teachers had asked them to employ. So they worked really hard, and I'm looking forward to seeing the results. I also want to recognize Mrs. Tonto, who is my lead teacher, but also my testings are in the building, and she's the one that works through all the schedules, works through all the accommodations, and makes sure that we have the proctors that do it. It wouldn't have happened, wouldn't have been a success without their work. I want to talk a little bit about some end of the year events. We've been able to do some things we haven't been able to do in the last, I want to say 3 years. Our Boylston Education Foundation had a PDF bingo. They moved it outside, which I think, I'm not on board, I don't get a vote, but I think we should do that from now on. It's a beautiful evening. The weather cooperated perfectly, and the kids had places to go play on the field when they got a little bored with the bingo. I'm not looking forward to finding out the final count, but I know that they made well over $10,000 on the event. So a tremendous amount of work on their part, and it was great to see the whole community back together. So we have the BE out there, and now the PTO is in full swing. We're planning for our race for education in a couple of weeks. They've targeted a goal of $15,000 raised. I know that they're about a third of the way there. And again, we'll have the whole community in so that everybody can run around the field and have a great time. It wasn't at the time, but there was a promise made that they meet their goal. I didn't check this with the new boss, but the principal will sleep on the roof once again if they make that goal. It's the best of all of the stupid things that I've done. It's like a night away, you get you set up a tent up there. Don't tell the kids because they think it's torture. So we're looking forward to kind of renewing some old traditions. And then finally, I'd be remiss if I didn't mention Bev Fletcher, who's retiring at the end of this year. She's been a fixture at Boylston Elementary School for 16 years. Her career at BES can actually drive to the high school now. Probably couldn't have a parking spot. And so she's impacted too many kids to count in the community, and I know that she's going to be missed by all. So I'm really happy for her for the opportunity to retire. You can see there's a laundry list of upcoming events. Spring is a very busy, fun, exciting time. I did want to highlight two and invite everybody on the committee, if you would like. We will have our combined concert tomorrow here at Tonto at 7 o'clock. I'm stealing this so John can't say it now. It's, again, a tradition we have not been able to have for the last couple of years, where we bring the Berlin and the Boylston band and chorus together for a performance on the big one, in front of the big lights. And it's a great time. Jackie Bruss and Audrey Thompson are our teachers that make that happen. It should be beautiful. The other one I wanted to point out, because I wanted to steal John's thunder, was Friday, June 10th. We have a Connects Challenge, and that's something that Carol has worked with Dr. Thermal Fisher, to help support. We get Connect boxes in the 5th grade, and we give them a challenge. They work in small groups, and they create something. This year, it's a delivery system for a vaccine program. So the Berlin will travel to DES. We'll have everybody set up in the gym. They'll have a lot of time to put their creation together using the blueprints that they've already created. They'll be judged by professional scientists that come around with the rubric, and we ultimately award all the prizes to Boylston Elementary School. But it's great. The kids have a wonderful time. It's talking about hands-on learning opportunities, especially in the spring when it's warm and the 5th graders know their MCAS are over, and it really keeps them engaged. And it's a great thing that we have. So I invite anyone to attend. That's all I got.
Are you web streaming? You're sleeping on the roof?
In the past, I've done like a read aloud right around bedtime. So I don't know. They gotta make it 15,000. I'm not gonna do it.
I've heard a rumor that they're selling water balloons as a fundraising event, and they're gonna throw them at you on the roof. So true?
Not to my knowledge, but
Could be a surprise, sorry.
there are some neighboring fathers that I'm worried about, like firecrackers in the middle of the night. Like I wouldn't be surprised if they came to check on me. So we're just
Mr. Campbell, would you like to give your update?
Well, there's really no, what do I say? Yes, I want to be more entertaining than Mr. Thompson. But it's essentially the same thing, it's fine, we've done, Ace and I have done so much work to kind of keep the trouble out of schools kind of pointed in the same direction. So we are finishing MCAS tomorrow. They're still working on science study ice cream party, which apparently some of our older friends are getting. Is tomorrow afternoon. We are all looking forward to Mr. Zangi rolling his sleeves up and serving ice cream in his suit, because, that's a super.
There's gonna be a lot of students here. I don't think I'm gonna have to do that.
Hey. We're all hungry, they're looking forward to the ice cream. To kind of echo something that Ace said, as we get back to normal, and MCAS is no way we're getting back to normal. It's interesting to see the kids kind of fall right back into that routine. We talked about it, Ace and I were talking about it before the meeting. It's not about getting the questions right or wrong, it's about doing your best on every single question. And we stress that with the kids on every single task. So it's not news. But I had the pleasure of being the 3rd grade teacher giving the ELA test a few weeks back, because Mrs. Tucker was on. And the first day, so the kids got Chromebooks with 2 pencils and 1 sheet of paper. And they could ask for another sheet of paper. And it's to kind of help them sketch out with their little essays that they have to do. And Mrs. Tucker works tirelessly, as do all the ELA teachers, to kind of help them think through how they're going to structure their answers. So the first day comes, and they work hard and they do their best. But as I gathered the scrap paper, because it has to be gathered and shredded. Because the Department of Education has nothing better to do than tell us to do with scrap paper. A lot of blank scrap paper. Not a lot of writing on that scrap paper. They went right from brain to keyboard. So I said to them the second day before we got started, I was talking to Mrs. Tucker, you've worked so hard with her. She was so hopeful that you would use your scrap paper to do a better job and to really think through your answers. Second day, pages were full of it was amazing. So and it's just a testament to how hard kids want to work to please their teachers and the work that teachers do every day to kind of get kids ready for that. It is not, I know in a lot of places it's a very high stress time, there are parades and this thing and that thing. It's another day for the kids at Memorial School. It's just another task. It's not a big deal when you do a test. So I was pleased with their effort. We'll see what the numbers look like. I would look forward to torturing my colleague, but it doesn't usually work out for me. We do our best. We do our best. I would have also pointed you to the concert tomorrow evening. I strongly encourage you to come. I was here yesterday running shotgun on behavior while the kids were rehearsing, the chorus was rehearsing, and they blew me away. I mean, it's really good. If you don't do anything else, come to the chorus part. I'm always amazed at the band because they make what Mrs. Preston called joyful noise in band at the beginning of the year, and to hear them actually be able to play songs and do all of that. I think it's a lot of places you can't get that kind of work, and we take the time and we invest the money in really strong musical education. And, come and see the results of their hard efforts tomorrow night. I mentioned ice cream. I will mention one last thing. It's just one of the things we're going to get to. Berlin Memorial School takes the memorial part of the thing very seriously. For years, we've had a very elaborate Memorial Day ceremony. It is less elaborate still, but the community's invited this year. So we'll put that newsletter out at the end of the week and hope to see the veterans come and the kids have a song. And when you're a part, if you're a veteran, when your service anthem is played, those veterans stand. And it's obviously amazing thing to see veterans, being recognized. So I'm looking forward to that as well. Other than that, I will let you guys turn it over.
How did hiring camp go?
Funny you should.
It was so long ago.
It was so long ago. I didn't want to make Mr. Thompson feel bad, but I thought ours was the best parent camp so far.
Well, his has
For sure.
Exactly.
Just wait, you'll see the pictures on Facebook.
I'm sure that I will, and Twitter, and Insta tweet, and whatever else. It actually did go very well. It's an important part of bringing people in and kind of getting them to feel comfortable. Staff was super hard to get that ready. Carol Costello was kind enough to do some tours of her old building, because of course Carol preceded me as principal of Berlin Memorial. So she did some tours, and we learned some stuff. It was the first year we took parent camp back into the two elementary buildings. And we learned some things like touring, we're gonna code their name tags next year so they kind of know when it's their turn to go. But something that was important to do again. Later on, one of the things that we used to do was, it was just parents, and there was a lot of discussion around, this is what occupational therapist, this is what speech therapist does. The teachers are gonna get together, they're gonna do a video, and we're gonna release that to just the incoming kindergarten parents. So they get that more adult version of what's going on. But a lot of people were there, I think almost perfect attendance. Mr. Zhang was there, and Ms. Costello was there. They did have a bunch of students, so thanks for everyone.
I just say that it's great to hear and see all the activity going on. Once again, I've been a part of some of the activities BES. I've done field trips. I was at the aquarium on Friday. I was at a third grade class recently. I went to the library. I think that it's really wonderful to be able to get out there again in the community, and look forward to hearing about the ice cream social at Tonto in June.
Yes. That's sure.
Nice. Thank you, Matt.
Equity.
Nice.
They don't like to say that. Doesn't make me say that.
Congratulations, guys.
Excellent. Okay. If the principals would like to end their day now and head home, I invite you to have a good day. We appreciate you coming and thank you. Thank you so much.
Too many high fives.
This is Diane's last meeting too. Thank you, Diane.
Oh,
Thank you.
Strange, yeah, but you're right here.
September.
So we have up to the negotiation subcommittee update. We have had, it's Megan, Grill, and I, as well as the administration. We've had 2 meetings, one on April 27th and the other on May 10th. All involved have worked really well together. And we're hopeful to have all items covered by the end of our next meeting on Thursday of this week, but I believe it's being rescheduled. And we're gonna have an executive session at the end of this meeting to update the committee on progress so far. Mr. Totman, do you have a policy subcommittee update?
Yes, thank you, I do. So we met last week, and we have several discrimination and harassment policies for you guys to read or first read tonight. These documents come straight from the attorney's office, so we put them up there as is recommended by the attorneys. Have a read through those. We took a look at our COVID protocols and policies. There seemed to be a bit of confusion out there around what happens with COVID positive cases in schools. But I did notice today, it's nice to see that the news is reporting downward trend in cases in Mass today, so that was nice. Congratulate them. So we discussed with Jeff about when we switched to at-home testing, the state recommended to at-home testing procedure or programs to do away with the contact tracing. And so we did that. I think that was what we did back then. We added some language into the policy to sort of clarify that. And that's up for a vote tonight. It's more in line with what we discussed earlier this year, what the nurses wrote to us about. And it's basically the contact tracing piece was a big administrative burden, taking away time from nurses, teachers, and administrators from their regular duties. So added on top. We've had several discussions this year about that. It really takes time away from the actual teaching that needs to happen. With the recent assessment data that we saw, we know we need all the time we can get for teaching and learning. So it's good that we don't have that. So we added some language in there to clarify that. I believe we'll be able to focus our energies on this with the same COVID policy and protocol, but just the more formalized version that's written all in one place, one document. So we wanted to add this language to the face covering and COVID policy, just to make it clear what our procedure is in the event that there is a positive case becoming known to the school district. So please take a read through it. We have them already through the policy and protocol A that's added to the end of that. We do not have language in there. We don't intend to have language in there that treats any student differently in this protocol in regard to the COVID protocol based on their vaccination status or any other status that they might have. That wouldn't be equitable. We don't think that would be fair. So just to all the nurses, teachers, and administration, we do thank you, congratulate you on your hard work, keeping the schools safe and open, and your dedication to our students. So that policy is out there for you to read and vote.
Also, Mike, I wanted to add in, the nurses were the ones prior to Desi suggesting they not do COVID, the contact tracing. They were the ones that felt it wasn't worthwhile. Well, do you remember the numbers, Jeff? Was it how many contact tracing did they do, and then how many actual positives? It was
Hundreds.
Yeah, and there were only like what 14.
It was single, I don't remember the exact number, it was very low.
Yeah, so going away from the contact tracing was not only what Desi had recommended, but also what our nurses had experienced and felt even prior to Desi going forward. So I just wanted to put that out there. Thank you, John, appreciate that.
And they weren't able to do, it was got to the point where there was so much of that they weren't able to do, or it become more difficult to do the daily nursing duties, so. They did write that original proposal.
Does anyone have any questions or comments?
I had one question on the harassment and the sexual harassment and all that, the first reads. Any reason these, are you doing these in any order, or are these coming across purposes that were being recommended?
Those are recommended from the attorney. Right?
Why were these recommended?
Did they change the
I believe there's some slight changes in the law, so they just updated them.
Okay.
But there's no significant changes in them, so Usually, there's two ways this happens. We either get them from the MASC for review, or when they get them, we get them from our attorneys. They've just done some work on, maybe there might be some small changes in there, but significant enough so that their district should adopt them. So this Mike's want to adopt them first read, correct, Mike?
Those are the first readings, which are
Yeah.
COVID policy
Yep.
protocol.
All right, the Superintendent Evaluation Committee. First, I'd like to thank you for submitting your school committee self-evaluations, and I hope to have a report for you on June 7th when we have our next meeting. Yesterday, you should have received the superintendent evaluation form via email with the information you have gathered over the year, as well as the report that Jeff gave tonight. It should be easy to fill out, or you should be well equipped at least to fill out. If you have any questions, please do not hesitate to reach out to me. I'm happy to help. Those evaluations are due on or before May 31st, so that we can have the report written by June 7th. And this last one is, don't forget to download and save your evaluation to your computer, and do not fill it out in attachment form. It will not save. And that's a lot of work to be lost, so I'd love to mention that. Does anybody have any questions on the evaluation? Mr. Wilbur, do you have an update for our election subcommittee?
I do. So we've received the information from the Secretary of State's office related to the upcoming election for the school committee. So a couple things I'll just note here. So I've spoken with both town clerks, both in Boylston and Berlin. We're going to plan to open the process to take out nomination papers on Tuesday, May 31st. The papers can be taken out from either the Boylston town clerk, the Berlin town clerk, or from myself as the district's clerk. In order to get onto the ballot, you have to collect for Boylston or for our Berlin-Boylston district. Each candidate has to collect at least 42 signatures. I remind any interested candidate that when collecting signatures, if you do choose to collect them from both Berlin and Boylston, you have to keep those separated on different forms. Because the Berlin town clerk is going to receive the form and certify votes from Berlin, vice versa in Boylston. And if there's the Berlin name on the Boylston list, the Boylston town clerk will cross it off as not a registered voter. Those are going to be due back to the town clerk by 5 p.m. on July 26th. So the process to take out paper and return them will be 8 weeks, which is what I understand pretty long compared to other processes to become, or get onto a ballot. So I'm glad that we're giving people the time they need. The other thing I'll point out is just to remind everybody, there are all 6 seats will be up for election in November. There will be 3 seats for residents of Berlin, 3 seats for residents of Boylston. On the Boylston side, 2 of those seats will be for a 4-year term. 1 of them will be for a 2-year term. The opposite is the case for Berlin, where 2 seats will be for a 2-year term and 1 will be for a 4-year term. So that's the information. I'm going to prepare a press release to put out and get over to the item, as well as other news agencies that are interested in sharing this, as well as making sure this information gets in front of the select boards of both Berlin and Boylston. So that is my report from the elections committee. And this is what happens when you complain about not having elections, you become a member of the election committee. Got it.
Adam, there's only 42 signatures.
42 signatures required in Berlin, Boylston. It's based upon, you a great question, it's based upon the number of voters in a recent election. The number of certified signatures required in the district nomination papers must equal 1% of the last votes cast for governor in the district. So,
And it doesn't have to be a specific percentage from the town.
42, you can get 42 Berlin, I can get 42 Boylston, I can get 20 Berlin, 22 Boylston if I want, however you want to do it.
You just have to keep it separate.
Right.
Correct.
I would also encourage you to get more than 42, anybody that's running, because a lot of times, or not a lot of times, sometimes they will nullify a signature because it doesn't match or the information. So it's always better to go over just to make sure you have 45 that are approved. I mean, 42, like that.
Correct, 42. Prospective candidates also have to decide when they take out the papers, whether they're taking out papers for the 1-year seat or the 2-year seat. That has to be decided when papers are taken out.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
All right, now we are moving on to the business items. At this time, I would like to entertain a motion to approve the formation of a budget and finance subcommittee.
So moved.
Second. Thank you, Mike. Discussion?
Good.
All in favor?
Aye.
I'm an aye as well, opposed? Motion to approve the formation of a budget and finance subcommittee is approved. Yay. I'd like to appoint Adam Wilbur and Julie Lee to the budget and finance subcommittee. Thank you for your service. I would also like to appoint Mr. Joseph Michaelbeck as the BBRSD treasurer for 2022, 2023. Thank you very much. And could I have a motion to approve the Marion Hoffman Award?
Second.
Discussion?
Just no.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
And I as well, opposed. Motion to approve Marion Hoffman Award passes. At this time, I'd like to entertain a motion to approve the Moses Reed Tyler Scholarship Award recommendations.
Second.
Discussion?
Just a question on both of these. I guess I'm trying to understand why these roles sit with us, and I think this has been discussed in the past, if I'm correct. Did we ever determine if there's a, does that need to be communicated? I'll ask.
Why it comes to the school
Yeah.
committee? That I don't know why it comes to the school committee, actually. I know for the Moses Reed Tyler award, the fund, the person who was in charge of the fund, or actually, I think it was first developed, it was recommended that the school committee approved that. The Marion Hoffman actually award, same thing, actually. It was recommended by those two families.
And I think those are the only scholarships that we approved, right?
Yeah,
It's just the way it was set up at their
that's
time.
why, yeah, they set it up that way.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. As well, opposed? Motion to approve Marion Hoffman Award passes. I would like a motion to, no, do we, sorry. Did I say Moses Reed, Tyler Scholarship Award recommendations passes. My apologies. I would like a motion to approve the Student Activity Fund Guide.
Sorry.
Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
I'm an aye as well. Motion, there's nobody else to oppose. Motion to approve the Student Activity Fund Guide passes. I would like a motion to accept the grade 7 Tonto field trip to Roger Williams Park Zoo. Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
I'm an aye as well. The motion to accept the grade 7 Tonto field trip to Roger Williams Park Zoo passes. I would like a motion to accept a donation of $9,942.10 from the Boylston Education Foundation to the Boylston Elementary School for the purchase of 5 instructional audio systems by Lightspeed.
So,
Discussion?
what are these?
Oh, that is a good question.
They're for people who have trouble hearing or filtering. It amplifies the sound. It's like it's an audiology help, basically. But I mean, I know personally it benefits all students, not just students who have those needs. Like for me personally, sometimes I would find something that helpful. But it's something that's assistive technology.
Is it like a microphone teacher wears, or is it?
I think they have a microphone and
The
there's
teacher
like,
wears one as a speaker up on
yeah.
It also helps preserve teacher voice. They're not having to project as much. They can talk in a very conversational tone. And as Bob is saying, it's a universal design to support everybody's, it's like equity in hearing, regardless of how large the space is or what your position is.
So these going into individual classrooms at BES? 5 classrooms.
So we have them now in all of the BMS classrooms.
Okay.
And I think that when we started doing this at BES, we had it in a couple of classrooms, and I'm not sure if they moved it to accommodate a specific student. And we're now, I don't know, this might get us to having it in every classroom. And then so these last a while too, so we don't need to replace them that often.
They're amazing systems. I know that from I want to hear most from Woodward, from the source. And when I go into those classrooms, you can stand virtually any place. Sometimes I go to a regular classroom and have trouble hearing the teacher, except when they're using those. So, yeah, it's amazing. Any place in the classroom you stand, you can hear. And they're talking in a normal tone.
Do we encourage teachers to use them consistently in their classrooms, or do we encourage them to go outside?
In my experience, teachers that have them equipped in the classroom, once they've been given a chance to get used to them, they do use them regularly, pretty reliably, because I think that it also, again, helps them in terms of voice production and being able to reach everybody in the room.
And if we had a student, it would be a 504, right, on an IEP?
It could be written into a 504 or an IEP.
Okay.
Yeah, it's an accommodation, which could be in either. Some students do require them to Bob's point. But that's not the purpose, right, of this gift. This is more of a universal design.
Yeah. So thank you to the DEF.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Really nice gift.
Fun bingo.
Yeah.
There you go.
They didn't tell me nobody won.
Yeah.
Put one in the pot.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
And an aye as well, opposed? Motion to accept a donation of $9,942.10 from the Boylston Education Foundation to the Boylston Elementary School for the purchase of 5 instructional audio systems by Lightspeed passes. I would like a motion to accept policy EBCFA with added amendment.
So,
Discussion?
just a second here. where's my-
No, absolutely.
So I'm pleased that we're covering COVID policies in one policy. And that we can point to this when there are questions about our COVID policies and to the extent to which we even have COVID policies in some cases. As I look at this, there's obviously a continuation of our mask optional policy except for school health offices, and it's pretty clear reading is that is the only time and place where we require masks with our schools here in Berlin and Boylston. I also see here that there's language added that says when a suspected COVID case is presented to the school community, we will follow protocol A. No other protocols are necessary, nor should any other steps be taken by school officials. So I think that what has occurred over the last couple of months is that there has been a combination of recommendations, mandates, and requirements from multiple entities, whether it's DESE or the Mass Department of Health or the CDC. And at this point, many of those are not in compliance with each other. And when we don't have a policy that states what our policy is, different people within a building might look to different other entities to determine what our policy actually is. As I started looking and reading through some of the information that we've even reviewed going all the way back to January or even back to August with our reopening plan, there were things even within our own policy approved documents that conflict with each other. So I think this is our be-all, end-all COVID policy document is great. I think that if we in the future need to make adjustments to this, that we come look at this first and make it very easy for our administrators and teachers to understand, and nurses to understand what our policies are. I think that prior to now, it's been some of the failure of the school committee to not have had this as clearly stipulated as we do now, which is to say that there are no other protocols beyond what's in here that we expect from our school officials when it comes to contact tracing or anything of that nature. And furthermore, it looks like here we're putting in place a protocol that specifically speaks to students and I assume staff, individuals that says who test positive. And the requirement is that they will remain out of school for 5 days and can return once they've been without a fever for 24 hours and experience improvement in other symptoms. So we certainly, I think, are continuing to be very aware of the COVID situation. We obviously have more cases happening right now. Luckily for everybody, most of these cases have pretty mild symptoms, and I think that we continue to monitor this. I know I look at the DBRSD dashboard every Monday morning and see where it is. And Christy, thanks for continuing to get that published for us every Monday morning. It makes us aware of what's going on across our school district. And I think it's no different than what's going on in the districts across the state right now. And I think we continue to have a policy that is appropriate for the current endemic nature of this disease that causes predominantly mild symptoms in the vast majority of people who get it, especially students who are in our schools. So thank you guys, and I certainly support you together here.
And we will, we'll certainly, once approved, get it out to the schools and make sure they're following the policy.
Okay. Anyone else for discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
And an aye as well, opposed? Motion to accept policy EDCFA with added amendment passes. Items J, K, L, and M are all in first reads. So we will vote on those next time. Our next and final meeting is June 7th. We're really looking forward to having Todd join us as an official member. We'll be meeting the committee of 6 again. Could I have a motion to go into executive session to discuss strategy with respect to collective bargaining with PBEA and not return to open session? Excellent. So I'm going to do a roll call. Julie?
Yes, aye.
Mike?
Aye.
Adam?
Aye.
I am an aye as well. This concludes our meeting. Good night.
Nice work.
You.
Judy?
Congratulations.
Thank you for
I was
giving me
thinking
a
out.
Christine.